Hey guys, welcome to Questions to Eden, and I'm the author of the online blog Jason Plubel. And have you ever heard somebody say that Christians and that the church started the Crusades unprovoked to forcibly expand and impose Christianity on Muslim nations that were living in peace and tolerance with the surrounding nations around them? If you have, then they're completely wrong. And today I just want to choose a few instances between the time of Muhammad's death up to the church's first crusade in 1095. Just chose a few instances that really display what was going on in this 400-year period that led to the Christians starting the crusades against the Muslims. And it is not tolerance and peace on Islam's side. It is absolutely terrible. From the time of Muhammad's death in 632 AD to the second crusade, because Muslims really did the first crusades. The first crusade of the church was a response to the Muslims. But anyhow, I digress. Muslims really began in Medina with Muhammad, would eventually take over Medina. Muhammad would become like a political leader there, and he would go on with his caravans and his raiding parties and start taking over most of the Arabian Peninsula by his death. And then following his death, all of his successors pretty much just expanded Islam to the rest of the Arabian Peninsula, into North Africa, up into Spain, up into Jerusalem, up to like Turkey, over into India, into South Asia and such. So it was a period of conquest for them. They were expanding, taking over pagan and enemy cultures and nations and such. This 400-year period from 632 to 1095 was constant harassment from Muslims to Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, Persians, Hindus. Doesn't matter. Anybody that wasn't Muslim, that a Muslim could conquer, they took that advantage and did that. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't like they sent missionaries in to convert them. No, it was by the sword, by violence, by force. And modern historians paint this period, it's called the Golden Age of Islam. They paint this period as some utopian time of coexistence and tolerance between Muslims and non-believers. Just as an example of this, Karen Armstrong in The Curse of the Infidel, a century ago Muslim intellectuals admired the West, why did we lose their goodwill? She writes, until 1492, Jews and Christians lived peaceably and productively together in Muslim Spain, a coexistence that was impossible elsewhere in Europe. And she's talking about this period between like the 700s and the 900s, where Muslims were pretty much going back and forth with the Christians with Spain, with the whoever had ownership of the land and such. And it started with Muslims coming in and kicking Christians out. Yet, despite what modern historians will paint about the Golden Age of Islam, it was hardly a time of comfortability and peace for Christians and Jews. And several decades after the Umayyads would claim ownership of Spain, calling themselves the Caliphate of Cordoba, the Holy Roman Emperor Otto I would send an emissary to Spain. His name was John of Gors, and he would witness the persecution that was going on there. After observing all the suffering and persecution, public humiliation, and religious attacks that the Jews and Christians in these areas were paying and suffering from and such, he suggested that he is going to go back and tell Otto I about this. But a Spanish bishop would warn him about this, telling him that every time we've tried to do something about this persecution, it has only made it worse and more intense. Those who pay jizya is religious tax, so in a Muslim-dominated area, any non-Muslim, only Jews and Christians, people of the book, would have to pay an annual religious tax in order just to coexist there. Those who pay jizya, or the dhimmi, is what they are called, the protected class, they would pay this annual tax in order to be a non-Muslim. In return for this freedom of religious conscience, the peoples of the book, pagans had no such privilege, were required to pay a special tax. No Muslims ever paid taxes, and to observe a number of restrictive regulations. Christians and Jews were prohibited from attempting to proselytize Muslims, from building new places of worship, from displaying crosses or ringing bells. In sum, they were forbidden most public displays of their religious rituals. And jizya wasn't cheap either. It drove many of the dhimmi, this protected class, into poverty, and they would fight and struggle to even meet the quota for this tax. Robert Spencer writes in The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS, one contemporary account tells of priests being pelted with rocks and dung by Muslims while on the way to a cemetery. The dhimmis also suffered severe economic hardship. Paul Alvarez, a 9th century Christian in Cordoba, complained about the unbearable tax that Muslims levied on Christians. Nor could Christians say anything about their lot because it was prescribed by Islamic law, and criticizing Islam, Muhammad, or the Quran in any manner was a death penalty offense. In 850 AD, Perfectus, a Christian priest, engaged a group of Muslims in conversation about Islam. His opinion of the conqueror's religion was not positive. For this, Perfectus was arrested and put to death. Not long thereafter, Joannes, a Christian merchant, was said to have invoked Muhammad's name in his sales pitch. He was lashed and given a lengthy prison sentence. Christian and Muslim sources contain numerous records of similar incidents in the early part of the 10th century. Around 910, in one of many such episodes, a woman was executed for proclaiming that Jesus was God and that Muhammad had lied to his followers. To even go further, the 11th century historian Ibn Hayyan of Cordoba notes this concerning the famous caliph of Spain, Abd al-Rahman III. God showed gifts upon him, because of his keeping of the law and subjugating of men, so they sang his praise and his defense of the people's hearts against heresy. Following the true and witnessed traditions attributed to the greatest of all imams, Malik ibn Anas, imam of the people of Medina, he ordered his Zalmadina, Muslim judge in charge of patrolling the public spaces to enforce Sharia law, Abdullah b. Badr, his Mullah, to interrogate the accused and carry out an inquisition against them, terrifying them and punishing them severely. He would also record an incident where one of Ruman's officers brought 100 Christians to a place called the Orchard of Nara, and Rahman would have all 100 of these Christians publicly executed in front of a crowd of Muslims, and he records that after the execution, all of the Muslims would praise Allah and celebrate the executions. But just to go even a little further with Rahman, he would also incorporate lions and animals into the punishment and humiliation of the dhimmi. And just to move on to another incident, whenever the Banu al-Mustalik tribe came to fight the Muslims, and when the soldiers cried out to their commander that they were sexually deprived due to the absence of their wives, they were in a far land fighting, they didn't have their wives with them, and their commander, Abi Sa'id al-Qadri, noticing the beauty of the captives and with Surah 424 in mind, quote, "We decided to have sexual intercourse with them, but by observing Azul." So right here, they raped their captives just because they were sexually deprived because their wives weren't present. And they did this any place that they conquered or pillaged. They would kill all of the men, capture the women and children, enslave them, make them sex slaves. It was not pretty. It was not tolerant or peaceful in any sense of the word. Or how about whenever Muhammad raided Khaybar? And after killing the Jewish leader there, Kinana, he took his daughter, Safiya, as a sex slave for one of his soldiers. The soldier's name was Dia ibn Khalifa. But after seeing how beautiful she was, and after hearing about how good she was in bed with Muslim men, Muhammad would take her away from Khalifa and make her his wife. And therefore, as Spencer says in his book, Safiya went from being the wife of a Jewish chieftain to being the wife of the man who murdered her father and husband in a single day. That is absolutely disgusting and heart-wrenching. But yeah, that's tolerance and peace, you know? It was 4 centuries of constant incidents exactly like these that would trigger the church to respond. And it was not an Islamic utopia of peace and tolerance, but rather an empire built on deceit, violence, force, and fear. Modern secular and liberal scholarship has watered down Islamic history so much that it is blinding our culture to what really this ideology is. And if you want to see what is probably going to happen in America if we keep this up, keep accepting these people from these foreign nations that have a completely foreign and ancient barbaric culture and ideology, Islam, it's going to absolutely destroy this country. If you want to see where we are headed, look at Britain right now. It's a freaking mess. It is a hellhole right now. There are people being attempted to be beheaded in the streets. There are rape gangs. Over 200,000 girls have been sex trafficked around Britain, in different places in Europe. And the police and government are involved with it and covering it up. And it is because there are Muslims in the government that this is what they live by. But Christianity in the West itself is being attacked by a 1400-year ideology that sees truth as power, not transcendent and objective. And when the evidence contradicts the theory, as a wise Marxist once said, so much for the evidence. I hope this cleared up your maybe some confusion about what you've been taught in school about the Crusades, about Islam, about Christianity, and about the church. And I really hope that you can now go out and help other people see how they're wrong and how they've been really taught lies by liberal education. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, like and subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on Instagram or TikTok or something, follow. Check out the online page. I am currently trying to write a book right now, and it's really taking up a lot of my writing time, so I am really on the schedule of posting an article every 2 weeks at this point as I work on getting this book ready and such. So that's all. Stay smart, keep asking questions, and remember, you have a right to be wrong. God bless.